Welcome to another news. I'm Jeff Brady. We go back into the fringe with our next guest, David Huggins. He tells a story of essentially losing his virginity to an extra-terrestrial woman in the woods near his Georgia home. The experiences continued throughout his adulthood, and he claims to have fathered hybrid children, mainly with a female being named Crescent. David says he's constantly monitored by them. He left Georgia to attend art school in New York City. They followed him there. This is one of the most unusual and compelling abduction cases because David had no recollection until much later in life. Once David's memories were triggered, a flood of experiences came to the fore. As many know in our culture, there's a social stigma surrounding someone who speaks about these experiences. David quickly learned to keep these events to himself, and he found a way to cope. He began to paint the startling recollections the best he could remember. I visited David at his home in New Jersey. We talked about his story and his recent book titled Love in an Alien Purgatory, The Life and Fantastic Art of David Huggins. There are a lot of topics in this interview that connect to past interviews, such as sleep being used as a method of moving between worlds, which is something past guest Dr. Lynn Hume wrote about in her book, Portals, Opening Doorways to Other Realities Through the Senses. David, welcome to Another News.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
David, we're in your home in Hoboken, New Jersey. Your paintings are on the wall around us. It's a remarkable collection with even a more striking story of being a lifelong abductee. Unlike other abductees, you were able to really capture with oil and canvas what you remember occurring during these experiences. You've also captured in your paintings what these beings look like. There are many of them, and in some ways the usual cast of beings according to other abductees. Let's start from when you were growing up in a rural town in Georgia and then had a strange encounter in the backyard.
It wasn't in my backyard. It was behind our barn. I was about 8 years old. I stop at a tree, and I start digging at a rock underneath the root. And as I'm doing that, I hear this voice say, "David, behind you." And I turn around, and there's this little hairy guy coming out of the woods straight toward me. And it was his eyes that I remember most. And this may sound strange, but I felt for an instant I was inside those eyes, looking out at me. And then I'm me again. And I remember screaming and scrambling back and running toward the barn. When I got to the barn, I turned around, and the little hairy guy, whatever he is, had turned around and was going back into the woods. I ran to the house. I told my mama that there's something out at the barn. And she says, "What?" I said, "I don't know. It looked like a monkey or something. I have no idea." She says, "There's no such thing as monkeys in Georgia, except in a zoo." And I says, "Okay." So anyway, boy, you were just making things up. And I get outside. And anyway, when I'm outside, I start thinking about it. And later that day, I go back out to the barn, and I look at the line of trees. And the little hairy guy steps out from behind them. I run away. And that was it. Until that night, in bed, and I'm looking outside, and I see this tree that we have. It's a pear tree. In it was what I thought was a bird with large glowing eyes. And I fell asleep. And then the only thing I can faintly remember is that someone else came into my bedroom. Didn't disturb my brother or my sisters. It took me outside, and that's all I remember. This happened several times.
Do you have a description of the being that took you?
It was the little grays. I mean, they were, I don't know what else to call them. I mean, that's what they're called. That's what I've picked up on. But they're called the grays. And they're about maybe 3 or 4 feet high. And they came inside my bedroom. and they took me out. That's really all I can say about that.
I have your book right here, Love in an Alien Purgatory.
Oh, God.
The Life and Fantastic Art of David Huggins. And I have to say that your artwork is really amazing. I'm impressed at how you vividly captured a lot of these very strange experiences that, like I said, many abductees don't remember this well. How were you able to access these visual memories?
There was a time after 1987 where I was having sleepless nights. I didn't know why. And I heard Whitney Strieber on the radio. And anyway, I went out to get a book. I think it was called Intruders. The first bookstore I went to was on 8th in Washington. It's no longer there now. And I went inside and I asked them if he had the book. He said no. He said, there's another bookstore down the street. So I went down there. They didn't have it either. So when I come back, I'm walking back past 8th Street. The guy in the first bookstore says, "Hey, David, I've got your book for you." I says, "What?" Well, yeah, this woman comes in and she says, "This book is for you." And I said, well, thanks. I take the book and I start slipping through it until I get to a chapter called Other Women, Other Men. And then there was an incident with this guy who was having sex with this very strange woman. And it's like, wham, right in my head. Oh my God, here's a woman I never told anyone about. And image upon image started coming back to me. And that was it, really.
That particular book, that chapter where sex was involved with an alien woman, you might say?
Yes, an alien woman.
That was a trigger for you to
That was for me, yes.
Bring back those visual memories of those experiences that began at approximately what date would you say?
Well, from 1951 until, we left Paulding County when I was about 12 years old. I don't remember too many experiences after that. There were a few. There was one time when I was about 17 years old, and I was meeting some friends at Altoona Lake. We were going to go swimming. Mm-hmm. Instead of taking the hard, dusty road, I thought I would go through the woods. And I go through the woods, and I get to a very shady area, and I see this woman sitting under a tree. I get very horny. I mean, extremely horny. She gets up, and she comes toward me. All I can see are those eyes of hers. It's like they had just grabbed me, yes.
These here on the cover?
Yes.
With the blue inside?
I can't say that. That happened later.
Okay.
And I pull down my pants. She gets on top of me. And as she gets on top, I reach my climax. It was very painful, but at the same time, very exotic or ecstatic or whatever. And I'm looking at her eyes, and then I'm saying, what the hell is going on? And I pass out. After that, I don't know how much later, it couldn't have been much longer, but I wake up, I've got my pants around my knees, and I have no idea why. I quickly get up, pull my pants up, and I remember saying, I got to go to Altoona Lake. And so I rush off, and as I'm leaving, I forget the whole incident. Anyway, I go down to the lake. My friends are there. We go swimming, boat skiing. End of the day, that was it. So anyway, they drive me back to my home, and that was it. But I don't remember the incident.
Until 1987.
Right.
Okay. Let's get a quick look at this image here. Oh, here it is. First experience.
Yes. I would have thought I would have lost my virginity in a Ford or something, but not like this.
You have a picture of the female being.
Right. And how would you describe her face?
And how would you describe her face? 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 How would you
Rather pale looking, very large almond-shaped eyes, a very thin nose, and a very thin mouth with a black hair, and a black cloak or a dark blue cloak.
When you started to recall this in 1987, did all this detail that's in this painting really come in to view for you?
It did. For me, yes, it did.
So she was not naked in this?
No, she wasn't naked. But she got on top of me, and I reached my climax, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. 2 weeks later, in this book, going chronologically, tell us what happened next.
I was in my bedroom. I was asleep. And suddenly I opened my eyes, and the little hairy guy was in my bedroom. All I could see was his glowing eyes. And he says to me, "Come outside."
What color eyes?
They were almost golden, almost blinding. And he said, "Come outside." So I get up, get dressed, and I go outside. And I am to follow him. And we cross a field into a wooded area, and there is this large glowing thing in the wooded area. And we go inside. And I think either I had another sexual experience or they were just like giving me a medical exam. That's all I can say about that.
In this next amazing painting, it's really haunting. There's an egg-shaped craft and what seems to be an outline of a door, but there are two beings on the outside of the craft. I assume this is at night?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's that part. It's just the next image from the other painting.
Can you describe these beings?
It was the woman, black hair, large eyes, pale face. She's wearing the star cloak, and the insect being. I don't know whether he's really an insect being or not, but he resembles a praying mantis. And I've seen several different ones. I've seen them rather small, about my size, and larger than me, yes. There are a lot of times where he seems to be wearing a cloak, and there are other times where he doesn't seem to have anything on. But he looks very thin, very spindly. And there's this one time where there seemed to be some light glowing from behind him, like he was backlighted. I don't know what else to say about him, really.
Could you tell maybe if there was a position or a ranking? If so, where would this praying mantis type being be in that
I would
sense?
say he would be on the top echelon. And then there is another guy who is rather tall, rather pale face. It looks somewhat human, but there is like a knob on the back of his head, and he has hair. And there's hair growing out of this knob on the back of his head.
On top of the head?
It was like, I don't know, almost like a feather, but it was part of the growth on the back of his head. That's all I can say about it.
There was an author, he's popular now, he's been on many, many shows on Coast to Coast and many others, named David Huggins, and he wrote a series of books with other authors called Missing 411. And it chronicles hundreds of stories of people going missing in national parks, and among them there are accounts of hairy beings. I'm not saying Bigfoot, but full hairy beings snatching children or peering out behind hedges.
Okay, that sounds very familiar to me.
Here we have something very similar to your story and what some of these people have seen in these national parks when they've come back alive. Now, from Georgia, you moved up to New York.
Yes, I did.
In your book, you talk about being followed by these beings. Tell listeners about that experience.
Well, I moved from Georgia, and I come to New York to study art. And these beings follow me. I don't know how they know it, but they do.
How did you know it?
There wasn't I remember an implant being inserted up my right or left nostril. And that was it. I think that's the way they stay in contact with me. Anyway, I have an apartment on 87th Street. And what was very interesting is that I had a part-time job working in a hardware store. I'm putting stock on the shelf, and I turn around, and there are these two people, whatever people means. And I go over to them and ask them if I can help them. They don't say a word. They just look at me. I repeat that, may I help you? Again, they don't say anything. I remember looking at their eyes, and I remember backing back. Then they quickly turned, and they walked out of the hardware store. Later that day, it was during the 1965 transit strike. Everybody was trying to get wherever they were going, and it was around 7 o'clock. We closed the store, and I think to myself, oh man, this is going to be one very long walk because this was on the east side. Uh-huh. Anyway, I get to 5th and 72nd.
In New York City.
In New York City. And I stick out my thumb. Everybody was hitchhiking during that day, those days. Mm-hmm. It was wonderful to see people hitchhiking.
Right.
And I stick out my thumb, and this big black car stops and picks me up. A woman looks out the window and says, where are you going? And I remember saying, if you can just take me across Central Park, I can walk the rest of the way. She has large eyes, dark hair. And anyway, I just get into the car, and she takes me across Central Park. And when we get to the other side, says, ma'am, you can let me out. You can let me out here. I can walk the rest of the way. She says, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to 87th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam. She says, I'll take you. She did. Anyway, I get out of the car, and she's just looking at me, just staring at me. And I say, well, thank you very much, miss. Thank you very much. You saved me a long, wet walk. I go inside my apartment, and that night, I have a very strange dream, whatever that is, of a woman. She has her eyes closed, but I know that she's coming toward me. I don't remember anything else after that. But the next morning, the bed is in disarray, and I just could not figure it out. I just figured, well, it was a dream, and that was it. So I get up and I go to school, and that was all I remembered. That's how it started, as far as I know.
This is a fascinating area because when these beings take on a human form, I often wonder how they're able to do this. Did it occur to you that these were part of the entities when you saw them in the hardware store at that time?
I'm thinking yes. I don't know who they were. I don't remember seeing them after that. I just remember the woman in the car.
Now, you're a student in New York studying art.
Yes, at the Art Students League.
From that particular incident, the ride that you got in the rain and the dream afterward, what started to happen to you?
I started remembering when I would wake up in the morning and I would hear these words, we'll be back tonight. I would forget it. It would just go out of my mind. This goes on for several months. And then one morning, I think it was in late fall, early winter, I heard those words again. But this time, I didn't forget. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, it was only a dream. She isn't real. Yes, she is. I'm going back and forth. I don't know what to do. By the end of that day, I was basically a nervous wreck. And so I started walking up Broadway to 87th Street. And I passed a florist. And I go inside, and he has these what are called pink cyclamens, beautiful flowers, beautiful pink blossoms that folded back upon themselves with dark green edges, serrated edges. And I thought to myself, if she's real, these flowers are for her. If they're not, I'll do a painting of them. I took them home, put them on a bookshelf, and that night I went to sleep. Don't remember a thing, not a thing. And when I get up, I look at the bookshelf and I feel I have put something on the bookshelf, but I couldn't remember what. So anyway, I get cleaned up and I go to the league. I have a part-time job there. I'm working in the gallery. Around 12:30, someone from the office comes up to relieve me. So I go have lunch, and I go down to the first floor, and I start walking into the back of the studios. And I pass Mario C. Cooper's watercolor class, and it's filled with flowers. And I go, wow! It all started flooding back. She took the flowers. And I just like, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, I know she's real. I know it. There's no if, and, or buts, no belief at all. Mm-hmm. And that night, I go back to my apartment, clean the apartment up, hoping that she will return. I know she is. And that night, I changed my clothes 3 times. I got into a suit, a tie, white shirt. I wanted to be presentable, right?
It's a strange experience, but you're willing to cooperate.
Yes.
This could be something real.
Yes.
Yes.
And so anyway, I tried it 3 times. The first hour, they didn't show, so I changed into some very informal clothes, colored shirt, pair of blue jeans. That didn't work. And around 12 o'clock or so, I just take off all my clothes, and I get in my bed, turn out the lights. There's light coming in from the street lights. And I'm looking around, and suddenly I see this point, I don't know, maybe a black spot on the wall. Then it opened up to about 6 or 7 inches, and then I feel this incredible feeling of euphoria, really. And then it opened up to about 6 feet, and the woman and the insect being come inside my apartment. And the insect being goes and stands to the far side. The woman comes over to me. We have sex, and that was it.
You weren't afraid at all?
That was the thing. I should have been afraid. But there was this euphoria, this feeling of just feeling very relaxed and everything.
This is a common experience for abductees with, I suppose, a manipulated emotional feeling to relax the human.
Yes, I'm thinking so, yes.
This portal that opened up in the wall, you have a painting where you also went through that.
Yes.
Were you just curious? What is this?
Yeah, I wasn't forced to go through the opening. It was left up to me, really. And I remember looking at the woman, and she just doesn't say a word to me. It's entirely up to me. So I go over through the opening, and I'm someplace else. Now, what is interesting about this is that there is an apartment building right next door. Why didn't this opening go into their apartment? But it didn't. It was like, I don't know how to explain it, but it didn't go into their apartment. I was someplace else.
It was a door, nonetheless.
Yes.
You stepped through it. In your painting, it looks like it's a spaceship.
It does. There are times when I felt I have been on a ship of some kind, very bright, and there are other times when I felt I was underground someplace. But that time, I went through the opening, and the woman is there. The insect being closes the opening, and I am looking out a window, and there is the earth in the distance. And I'm just looking at it. And it brought back a memory that I had when I was a kid, where I was shown this. And I remember saying, "Oh, it's so pretty. It's so pretty." And I hear a voice say, "Yes, something so pretty should be taken care of." And that was it. I was there for a while. She introduced me to the other little gray guys. I don't remember them saying anything. And I think I have a medical examination. Is the best way I can say it.
Did you ever get any tangible evidence from these experiences after you were taken? Did you have marks on your body that you could take a picture of or say to someone, "Look, here it is. Here's a mark"?
Well, there was an incident that occurred when I was a kid where there was a sore on my left knee. It was like something had been scooped out. And it's gone now. But that's about it. It was like a piece of my skin, flesh, had been scooped out of my knee. And that was it. I never showed it to my mother or anything. I figured it was a sore, but it would heal by itself, and it did. And that's about it.
Our guest is David Huggins. We're speaking about his book and experiences. His book, the title is Love in an Alien Purgatory, which he doesn't like the title of. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
No, that's fine with me.
All right. The Life and Fantastic Art of David Huggins. David, a lot of other abductees have stories of being monitored by maybe men in black or strange individuals in the government that are monitoring them. They kind of know this civilian is going through these special experiences, and they also monitor as well. We see that in films all the time. Was that happening to you?
Well, I remember that there was this one time many years ago, after 1987, a guy had gotten in touch with me, and he wanted to talk to me about my paintings and my experiences. Before he had gotten to me, there was this car that came by my house 3 times, and the guy was just looking at me, and that was it. I don't know anything else outside of that. But anyway, the other guy had come to see me, and he said something very interesting. He says, "My muffler fell off my car. I couldn't understand why, because he had it put on a couple of weeks earlier. It was a brand new muffler. I didn't think anything about it, but that was it. But anyway, he was late by an hour."
Of course, there was that experience in the hardware store where you had those people there staring at you, and it was obviously something was going on, and they certainly wouldn't express it, but it was unspoken that they knew what was going on with you. So maybe you are monitored on another level by these beings that are taking you. You mentioned the implant. That's a monitoring device, according to many people.
I think I have more than one implant. I think that now. I don't know it for sure, but I think it. But the one that I really remember was the one up the nose. And I remember, that was very interesting. I was taken outside. These little gray guys get around me and we start floating up. And I see something bright overhead. We go inside, and I'm in a room which is quite bright.
You're floating up how high into the sky?
Oh, far from the house. And
a couple thousand feet?
Couple of thousand, I would say something like that.
During the evening or
During the night. And I'm in this room. I'm with a little gray guy, and this woman comes in, and I turn to the little gray guy and I ask him, "Is that your mom?" They both smile at this. But the woman has a long, thin rod in her hand, She comes over to me, and she inserts it up my nose. And she finishes, and I remember saying, "Oh, you hurt me, you hurt me, you hurt me." And she says, "The pain is going to go away." And she looked right into my eyes, and the pain was gone. Then they sent me back. It's the only way I can say it.
Now, when we had a phone call before this interview, and this kind of struck me because it's very unusual, you said they're probably listening to our phone call right now. Could you relay any significant anecdotes that would give you the sense of being monitored by these beings?
The only thing I can think of is that they followed me from Georgia to New York. And I moved from one apartment to another. I moved over to the east side. And they had left me alone for a while. And then one night I'm at home, I'm looking at my drawings, and I've got the radio on. Then I hear these words, we know where you are. I look at the speakers. I think, well, maybe the guy had left his mic on or whatever, but it wasn't the case.
Male voice.
It was a male voice, yes. But it was very, very gentle, very soothing. Anyway, I become very, very sad. And I remember taking off my clothes and laying down on my bed, and I started crying. And I heard these voices say, "Everything is fine, everything is all right, everything is fine, everything is all right," over and over and over. And I suddenly flip out, and I start crying, "Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, dear God, no, no, no." Two very large women grab a hold of me, and they force me to the floor. And I'm lying there crying, and this woman, Crescent, whom I know, comes over to me and says, "David, what is wrong?" And I remember saying, "My baby died. It was all my fault. I was holding it, and I got scared, and I dropped it. It's all my fault. It's all my fault." She gets up, and she looks at the insect being. She tells him what the problem is. And then she bends back down. She says, "David, your baby didn't die. See, here's your baby." And I look up, and one of the women is coming through an opening, and she's holding the baby. I get up, and I go over, and I kiss the baby's forehead. What was very interesting is that the two large women stayed with me. This control, whatever it was, hadn't taken complete. It was not complete.
Control over you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. There was a certain freedom, if you will, on my part. And anyway, I touched the baby, I kissed it, and I turned around, and I noticed that everyone looked very, very frightened. And I just oh man, I was so sorry that they felt this way. And I remember saying, "Listen, there's something I wish to say to all of you. I am so sorry that my behavior scared you. Please forgive me." A few of the women came over to me, and they started touching me, letting me know that it was all right. And then I think it was 2 or 3 women who went to the insect being, and they said, "Can David stay?" "Yes, we would like for him to stay." And the insect being says, "No, David has to go back." Upon this, the 2 large women who had stayed with me took one last look at me, then turned and started walking away. I don't know what it was. I just felt kind of bad the way they looked at me. And I remember saying, "Excuse me, ladies." They whirled around. They almost took like a defensive stance. And I says, "I feel I owe you two a special apology. I'm so sorry about what you had to do because of my behavior. Listen, if there's anything I can do to help make up for it, all you need to do is ask. And if I can, I will." They looked right at me. They came right toward me. They didn't say anything, but they had these funny little smiles. It was like, "David, we know something that you don't." And they took the breast, and they raised them up in front of me. I am shocked. I fall back. I fall on the floor. I'm like, oh, ladies, what? 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 And someone comes up from behind me. I don't know who. I think it's the little hairy guy. He helps me to my feet. I am like, what do I do now? Anyway, the woman who is cupping her hands around her breast comes forward. And, well, I make out with her. And then the next night, I make out with the other one. And that was it.
For some people listening to this, they would think, this is fantastic, David. Great job. What an experience you've had. Not what you often hear about abductions. And what you do hear when it becomes romantic is that it's a hologram and it changes. And then there's some creature there you'd never make out with.
I don't know what to tell you in regard to that. I really don't know. I just remember they were female, they have breasts, they have vaginas, black hair, which I think is a wig. I'm not sure about that, but I think it's a wig. And
female human bodies.
Female human bodies, yes.
But the head?
The head is like whitish gray with large black eyes, a thin nose, and a thin mouth with a sharp chin. And they have this hair on their head, which can be seen as a wig. I'm not sure about that, but I think it is.
Have you seen these beings take on other forms, such as animals or birds?
The only thing I could think of as being a bird was the incident when I was a kid, when I saw the owl in the tree, which wasn't an owl. I remember seeing its large glowing eyes, and that was it. But I was thinking it was an owl.
What advice would you have for people who are going through similar experiences?
I would say I'd have to leave it up with them. You know, I cannot tell them how to think or say in regard to whatever this phenomenon is. I know that these beings have never hurt me, except that one time with the insert up my nose, but that was it. I'll leave it up to the individual.
Now, you mentioned sometimes that you think that you're underground, and I wonder, do you suspect that these beings exist underwater as well?
I don't know about underwater. I just remember that there were incidents where I was underground with them. I have no idea where it is.
One of the paintings you have in your book is of underground caves with, it looks like ships in these recesses in the sides of cliffs. Can you describe this painting and why you did this?
Well, I remember that I was walking around someplace, and I come across these caves, and I noticed that there is something inside them. And I just did the painting from that memory.
You have a painting of this underground meeting where you have the mantis beings, little gray guy in the blue suit, two naked women, similar to Crescent. Is that Crescent? There?
Yes.
And then little hairy guy to the right. What's going on here in this?
There was an incident where I was in my studio on 87th Street. I converted part of my apartment to a studio. And I was working on a painting. And then the wall opened up. And I hear this woman, Crescent, saying, "David, the baby is dying." And I go, "Baby? What? Whose baby?" "Your baby, but it's dying." And I says, "Show me my baby." And at first she wouldn't do it. I think I had to scream it out. She picked the baby up and she thrust it out in front of her. And I remember saying, "No, no, no, don't hold the baby that way. Cradle the baby in your arms." And I says, "I've got to come there." She says, "No, it's not allowed. My baby's dying and I can't come there. Watch this." I go and I lay down and I pass out. The next thing I know, I'm there, wherever there is. And the insect being comes over to me And in no uncertain terms, he asked me, what am I doing there? And I say, I want to see my baby. I want my baby. He says, no. Anyway, I remember letting out a whine. I bent one knee and then the other, and I begged him to let me see my baby. That was very strange. And it's like everybody was kind of shocked by that. But he said, follow me. So I follow him, and there was this woman holding the baby in her arms. And I reach over and I touch the baby. And I don't know what to call it, maybe static electricity or whatever. And I remember saying, whoa, did you see that? Let me do that again. So I touched the baby again with the same results. And everybody seemed to be very excited about what I had done. The other insect beings left. They were gone. Perhaps they had other babies to attend to. I don't know. But the insect being looks at me and is like, follow me. So he takes me into another room, and it is filled with babies.
Can you describe what these babies look like?
They're very small, very pencil-thin arms and legs, small chest, large head. And they're very lifeless, liftless even. And I'm there for one reason. I am to touch all the babies. For some reason, the human touch is very beneficial for the babies. I have no idea why, but it is.
It sounds like a hybrid program. Many will suggest that this is what it sounds like. That's not working very well.
I don't know how well it's working now.
If the babies are
sickly,
then
I don't know. I just found that my touching them was very beneficial. I don't know how or why. It was.
After you touched the babies, did they respond right away afterward?
I can't say that they really did, but I just know that it was beneficial for them. I mean, I had seen the children at different stages in their life.
Now, I notice in the painting, the mantis beings have a glowing area around their heads, almost like a halo. Why did you do that?
Because that's the way I remember seeing him. There was this light emanating from their heads, is the best way I can put it. And that was the way I painted them.
David, in your book, there's a section titled Privacy. And I would suspect that you would need some privacy at this point.
I remember. It was like everybody was surrounding me, okay? Everybody was there. And I kind of remember, could we have some privacy or something other like that? And everybody retreated. And it was just me and the woman. But I have a feeling they hadn't retreated too far. They were experiencing whatever I was experiencing.
There was a vicarious thing going on when you were having sex with these other beings.
Yes.
Interesting. Do you ask yourself, why me?
Oh, I have asked myself 1,000 times. I mean, that is the $64 question, isn't it? The people that I have met have asked the same thing. They don't know why. For me, it could have been as simple as, hey, look, there's a little 8-year-old kid. Let's check him out. It could be that simple. I have no idea.
I think it's more than that. To continue with these experiences, there must be something else going on, possibly genetically. But, of course, it's all speculation.
It is.
This realm is intangible at this point, and your ability to portray the memories in beautiful color and great images makes it come to life.
Yeah, thank you. I did my best.
Now that these experiences have come to life in these paintings, do you feel differently now?
I can't say that I really feel different. You know, I just know that some extraordinary things have occurred in my life, and I've had to incorporate them in my life. You cannot reject what you know. I remember my first time I exhibited my paintings. A woman comes over to me, and she's from CNN, and she's asked me a question about my work. Then she says, "You really believe this happened to you, don't you?" And I said, "No, ma'am. No, I don't. If I believed it, I could never have done the paintings. When you know something, you know it. And someone else's work would be on these walls and not mine." That's what I remember saying.
Could you tell us about other abductees who have reached out to you with similar experiences?
I can. I have gone to these meetings and people who have said things which are similar to mine. Of something coming into their room, something taking them out, which I remember. I really don't know what to say to them, really. They're their experiences, and I try not to intrude on them. And these experiences have happened to me. It has happened to others, many, many others. And how they deal with it is the way they deal with it.
Do you suspect that you were part of a breeding program?
Absolutely. I have been. That's all I can say about that. I was part of a genetics program which resulted in children. And I had to touch them. There was an incident where I was with them one time. And the woman is holding a baby. And she takes out her breast and she shows it to me. But I don't know how it's done, but she can't give milk. She can't feed the baby. So I said, well, let me try. So I started nursing on her breast, stroking it, hoping something would happen. I figure, the sensation might help, but it didn't. And what happened after that was that someone came by with a bowl of dark type of food and put it on her breast. And I feel a pressure on the back of my head pushing me forward. And I remember suckling on the woman's breast, but not as someone who's 25 or 26, but as a baby. It was instinctive. And there were other women around me holding their babies. And then after I had finished, she put the baby to her breast with the black food, whatever it is, and the baby began to nurse on it. It's like they were teaching me something, but at the same time, I was teaching them something.
Are they still around? Do they still come to you?
I'm 71. That's pretty old for them, I guess. But I can't think of anything in the past few years. I think one of the last times I remember was of a painting that I had done of a gray inside a plastic envelope. Now, the painting had gotten damaged, and so I remember retouching it. And as I was doing this, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if they use these bodies anymore. That night, when I go to sleep, I find myself with these beings. And several young people come over to me and they say, "David, we have new bodies now." And I don't know what you want to take of that, but that's what they said.
Generally, what are the responses to your paintings?
Oh, they've been very responsive, very productive. People have, they're not pretty paintings. They are not pretty. But they do give you a question in your mind about something that's going on. Well, people say, "Hey man, I like your paintings."
It's really amazing. This painting was fantastic.
Leaving the house. What was very interesting in regard to that is that during the day, I've seen them during the day. I was out in our back field looking for arrowheads. And I happened to look up and I see these little guys float down out of the sky. I go rabbit. I run. And I go around our house and I look underneath our house, which is like maybe 2 or 3 feet off the ground, and I see all these legs underneath it. And anyway, I run away, and I think to myself later, I was rather impressed by that. They floated down. And not only that, I remember a couple of them stepping back and, well, becoming invisible. It's like the air had become a curtain that they could go behind. And I thought to myself, wow, that is so neat. And then that night they show up, and they take me up into the air.
What was the catalyst for you to begin painting these recollections?
I was with these beings one time, and we were like sitting at a table, something other like that. And the tall being with the knob on the back of his head said, "Let David do paintings." And I says, "Okay, I can do that." Now, what was very interesting, it took me about a month before I did my first one. I was scared. I didn't know how to deal with it. I was having sleepless nights. It was incredible. Anyway, one morning I just got up. I said, to hell with this. And I remember I did my first painting. I worked on it during the whole day, during late into the night. And that night, after I had finished that painting, I got such a wonderful sleep. It felt so good.
What was that painting?
It was the being coming up over the bush when I was about, 8 or 9 years old.
That's in Georgia.
Yes.
That looks very frightening.
They came up from behind me. They faked me out. I was going over to a friend of mine's house, and I was taking a shortcut behind our barn. And I get to this open field, and I hear this sound, and I look toward these bushes, and there was this head slowly coming up from behind the bush. And I remember saying to myself, is that a head? Are those eyes? And then I get scared, and then all at once, I get the impression someone is behind me. And then I remember saying, why is it so bright? And I fall down, and I'm in the huddled fetal position, and there are these little guys standing around me.
I find it interesting that you really had no recollection for many decades of this until that trigger event. And I wonder if a lot of other people are going through similar things, but they never get the trigger event.
That I don't know. I really don't know. I just know that it seemed like I needed help. And with the case of the bookstore, when the guy come running out and saying, David, this woman left this book for you. This is so strange. Yeah, right. Anyway, I take the book and I start reading it, and I get to that chapter. And then every image I could think of starts flooding back. There was one time where I see the opening in the wall, and the woman comes through it, and I look at the insect being. I says, amen. If the owner of this building sees this hole in the wall, I'm in a lot of trouble. And he says, go take a look. So I go look, and I look in, and I see a little gray working at a table. And I remember saying, hello. And he turns around, and he just stares at me. So what can I tell you? I mean, it's not in somebody else's apartment, even though I'm right next to it. I just don't know how it's done.
Right, it's dimensional, maybe?
I am thinking dimensional. You want to say they're interplanetary? Fine. Intergalactic? Fine. Interdimensional? Well, I'm not sure. I'm just like, either that's the way they travel. I have no idea. I just don't. If they are from another dimension, where does their dimension begin and where does it end?
You saw the people in the hardware store, and they could have been those beings disguised as humans.
They were these beings. Only because of the way they looked at me and their eyes. They were dressed, they had on hats and stuff, but it was like I could only see their eyes.
So I wonder if that disclosure is an issue here because maybe there's a lot of them walking around as human beings in this country.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. I just don't know, really, but yeah, they seem to be able to keep their secrets very well.
Indefinitely for generations.
I often think about, there was something I had read or I had heard on the radio about people who have blonde hair. And that some scientists figured out that only blonde hair and blue eyes only go back about 6,000 years. And that is not very long. Blondes with blue eyes only came into existence about 6,000 years ago.
David, thank you once again for these wonderful stories and experiences, and I really appreciate this.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad you came.
That's going to do it for In Other News. I'm Jeff Brady. Join me again Monday.